It was a warm summer Friday evening, and I'm heading out of town to a barbecue with some work friends. I'm looking forward to a cold glass of wine in a big country garden. So I wasn't expecting the call when it came through. A serious work call on a Friday evening. We don't know how long we need you for. We don't know exactly what you'll be doing. Can you come in tomorrow? A Saturday? Yes, of course. The Grenfell Tower was a high-rise social housing block of flats, 24 stories high. And in the early hours of Wednesday, the 14th of June, a fire started. It was different than other fires in the UK and is largely accredited as the worst fire in modern history in a residential building. Modern buildings are designed to contain fires, to compartmentalize them. And that's why advice from the fire service had always been to stay in your homes, to stay put while we convene to put out the fire and then to evacuate people safely. The type of cladding that was used in this building was highly combustible, and the way in which the air installation brakes were fitted was not appropriate. And that contributed to the speed and the severity of the fire. It engulfed the entire building in a matter of hours, an unprecedented spread in a modern building, resulting in the devastating loss of 72 lives and many more people injured. Local government was seen as slow to respond, and central government were criticised for not doing enough, fast enough. And it caused a huge public outcry. On the day 3 of the fire, the public stormed the town hall, looking for answers, and councillors, afraid for their lives, stayed inside and didn't come out. And this just exacerbated the situation. It brokered a national and international debate on fire safety, building regulation, and social housing that is still going on today. I'm not here to tell you about the horror of what happened, my opinion on it, or the management of it. I'm here to share with you what I learned and how I think that's useful for business today. The UK government convened the largest crisis team together since the Second World War, an independent task force staffed with local government, central government, and aid agencies. There's a system and a process for running a crisis in the UK: Gold, Silver, and Bronze Command. Gold Command is strategic, Silver is operational, and Bronze is tactical. And we were asked to run digital and social media for Gold Command for the task force. And I was one of 3 leaders that put that team together. Have you ever been asked to do something that has never been done before? Or perhaps something you have never been done before? It sits a little bit uncomfortably sometimes for some people, and even more so when you have the scrutiny of the press and the public, and you're in the eye of the media. And of course, we were on the back foot before we started. We had to immediately get information out to the UK public. But how do you communicate with the public when there's no channels to do so? There's no overarching brand for government that is available that you can jump into and use for a crisis. There's no social media profiles hanging around. We had to look quickly at what we could use: Cabinet Office, the Mayor's Office, London Resilience, but they also have their own business to be able to deliver on those channels. So on the day that we were convened, we worked hand in glove with the Red Cross, and we were able to get information out on their channels immediately. While the volume of response was such, we quickly realized that we had to set up our own. So we did, on Twitter, Facebook, web pages on central government, our own website, as well as daily newsletters to stakeholders and to the public. But how do you put a team together as the crisis is still happening and still rolling out? We had a small team that had very specific roles that we could respond to as the flood and volume of response came through. When a crisis happens and the government are putting together the response team, press officers volunteer for it. But we didn't need any press officer, not people from a kind of background of a journalistic bent. We needed Twitter-savvy press officers. We needed people that understood that a message could be taken ambiguity and spread virally. We didn't just need Twitter-savvy press officers. We needed press officers that had been on the receiving end of negative attention daily, people who were resilient and could appropriately respond. So we quickly sifted the offers. Ministry of Defence, yes. Home Office, they deal with knife crime and immigration daily, yes please. Department for Work and Pensions, tax fraud, yes. We assembled our team. But press officers have their own work to do. So we only had them for 1 day, 3 days, or 5 days. And we ended up putting 50 people through the team in 50 days. And sometimes they would arrive, we'd have to brief them just within 30 minutes. They'd have to apply themselves all day to the task, get it correct, and hand over to the night shift. And we might not see them again. So we had to have processes in place. You can always say this, we said this yesterday, that data needs to be checked. I have no idea. We absolutely need to find the answer for that and get back to people. So we assigned very specific roles. You are just signposting. You are listening to social media to understand what people need. You are liaising with ground support to find out what people need on the ground. But how do you deal with a volume of response that is more than the team that you have to be able to handle? Tweets were coming in every half a second. So we had to use some AI tools, but not just social listening tools, tools that could tell us what was the issue, how that had changed by the hour, and how people were responding to that, to be able to help prioritize. We put a social media triage team together to be able to look at how we would be able to respond, and if we decided to respond to some of the issues that arose. Our first priority were survivors, looking at where they could get money for food that the government was giving to them. Where could they get their ID reprinted so they could get access again to their bank account? What were we doing about housing? And the next were people living and working within the site of the tower. Public Health England tested the quality of the air daily outside the tower. Is it safe to live and work here? And we published the information. And the next was coordinating between all the volunteers on the ground. And of course, listening to everything the public had to say about this and evaluating what responses we might be able to give. The support from public was absolutely astonishing, and so many people just got up and volunteered and stepped in and helped. But what do you do when you have 40 mattresses turn up and an irate driver and you've not asked for them and you've put everyone up in hotels? What do you do when you have app providers who want to give you their service for free, but you don't have a data team to evaluate how secure their app is or whether it's appropriate to be sanctioned on behalf of the UK government? So we had to say no quite a lot. You turn down people's help, even when it's not requested, they can get quite irate. Have you ever had to say no in your working life? Sometimes you might feel there's repercussions. Sometimes you might feel they haven't got authority to say no. So on the first day we were convened, we put together a single one-line strategy statement. And that was, we are here to help survivors and people affected by the fire. All of our communications must center on this. And that was helpful. Celebrities were brilliant at turning up on day one, driving attention for fundraising to the cause. We had Adele on site on day one. Rita Ora came of their own volition. Lily Allen got involved. But they had their own view on how we were handling things. I was asked, should we respond to Lily Allen? She's calling us out on Twitter. Does this help survivors and people affected by the fire? No, it doesn't. So no, we didn't respond. Because government was seen to be slow to respond and not being effective at giving enough resources quickly enough, it gave a rich seam of opportunity for politicians of an opposite political persuasion. They too had their voice on how it was handled. I got the call through from number 10. You need to respond to that MP. Does this help survivors and people affected by the fire? No, it doesn't. So no, we didn't respond. And I think having that one line in that central of our pillar of our communications enabled us to be able to do that effectively. And not to get embroiled in a Twitter spat that would have taken time and focus and attention away from what we were set up to do and deliver. On the 26th of July, Gold Command was disbanded, and we built a team that had trained with us on site and had seen all of the processes and put them back within the council, working with local council officers to aid the longer-term recovery. 6 short weeks, and so many lessons learned. And that's the reason that I'm here with you, is to be able to share with you there's things that I learned through that process that I use in business every day. The first is, consider centralizing your strategy, but giving autonomy to people who have the ability to be closest to the action or closest to be able to help. It makes them more agile and it makes them more effective. It's good for crisis teams, but it's brilliant for business. How often have you heard in business, let's turn this ship around, full steam ahead? I mean, what does this image conjure up? Something that's slow to maneuver maybe, hard to change direction, hard to turn around. And we hear it all the time in business. There's an analogy I borrow from Holos Change, a leadership consultancy, that says, consider your leadership as a flotilla. What does this image conjure up? You'll need your race strategist. You'll need your wayfinder. But people being agile, responding to weather conditions, specialists, maneuverability, but all heading in the same direction. Telcos are particularly good at this. So they give responsibility to their frontline staff who are dealing with customer service to give customers rewards at their discretion. So find the critical balance between centralized strategy and localized autonomy. Empowering people also makes the teams happier, and happier teams are more effective. It's okay to say no. But in doing so, you have to make that okay with yourself and with your organization. And having a single line strategy to say no, it should be just one, perhaps, of the tools in your toolbox. I was working with a media company, and they suspected that their internal change program was being delayed by a focus on too much process. I shared with them the one-line strategy approach, and they crafted their own. Oh, we're going to get the products out the door from ideation to delivery in 12 months. And when people sought to perhaps delay that process by asking more questions and putting it in for other reviews, they could say, does this help us get the products out the door in 12 months? No. So move on. So have a strategy to say no. And the last thing that I want to leave you with is probably the most helpful thing in the ability to have new ideas. Researchers tell us that there are 2 attributes of high-performing teams. The first is psychological safety, to have the ability to speak freely without retribution or intellectual theft. But even high-performing teams sometimes tank the ones with psychological safety. Sometimes they don't always make it unless they have one other attribute. And that other attribute is the ability to embrace minority ideas. I was the minority idea. I'm often the wild card in the crisis team. But I think that's essential, particularly in a crisis team, where you need people who think differently outside the structure and outside of the system. We have got to get better at tolerating people's ideas that disagree with us, to find their perspective and understand, even if we don't agree with it, to be able to evaluate it and consider what values, beliefs, and experience has brought them to that opinion. Because by doing that, it evaluates our own opinion, it moderates our own opinion, it stretches our critical thinking muscles, and it enables us to have more diverse ideas. The world needs people who can think strategically while delivering at speed. to embrace minority ideas and to have the ability and the courage to say no. I call them rebel change makers. We are the generation that can make a difference to the world that we live in, and perhaps, scientists suggest, the very future of our species. You can make a difference in everything that you do by being a rebel change maker too. What will you do differently? Thank you.